This is the Louie T Network.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to Week 17's Around the League look, season wrap-up, if you will, here on Lockdown coverage. I've been wanting to do this all week long, and this has been a weird week. Give you a little bit of background before we jump into it. And I just quickly want to go around the league, kind of talk about these games, what transpired in Week 17. And I know it's kind of late for this because we're literally on the cusp of the playoffs, but I felt compelled to do this because I saw some things from some teams and some individual players and some situations that could change and look vastly different next year, and I wanted to talk about it before it was too late. And once these playoff games start, who gives a damn about Week 17 anymore? So with New Year's being on Monday, then having to go back to work and everything on Tuesday, then we got snow on Wednesday night into Thursday, and I got like 7 or 8 inches. And again, for some of you who live in areas where snow is prevalent and you get it all the time, it's nothing to you. For us around here, 3 inches of snow sends everybody into a frenzy, let alone 7, 8 inches to a foot in some areas. That shuts down just about everything. So that was a little crazy. Then you got the playoffs that I needed to get out and do the preview and predictions for those. And then the Patriots story surfaced that I wanted to do that. I still got to try to figure out all the numbers for the winners and losers so I can get that out to the people that participated in that all season long. I still want to talk to my Redskin brethren and sisterin. And I never got around to, and I finally got to watch all of the games. So I was like, well, I watched them. I want to talk about them. So here's the platform where I'm going to do that quickly. So I'm going to just run through these games quickly, talk about some things that I saw on the way out. And now with all of the games being done in the regular season, we now have a formulation of the first 20 picks in the upcoming draft. I'm only going to talk about the first 10 picks because the top 10 is all that really matters right now. Everything else will kind of fall into place. But the top 10 is where you get the elite crop, best of the best generally. And then, the next 5 or 6 teams get what's ever left. And then every man for himself after that. So we'll start with the Redskins Giants. Redskins had a quest and a bid to go 8-8. They needed to win the final 3 games of the season. They had won the last 2 versus Arizona and Denver against 2 really bad quarterbacks in Blaine Gabbert and Brock Osweiler. They got Eli Manning in Week 17 and didn't fare so well. And for Kirk Cousins, boy, does he struggle with the Giants. He did it again. Giants able to get the win 18-10 over the Redskins. Eli Manning in what could be his final home game as a New York Giant. Played solid football, did just enough to help his team win. And I think he's going to be back in New York when it's all said and done. But we will see what happens with Eli. Kirk Cousins had a horrible game, 3 interceptions. He struggles with the Giants, and he also struggles in cold weather. It was really cold in that ball game, and it looked like a team that was disinterested in the Redskins, and so the Giants get the win. With the win, however, they don't lose any ground in their draft situation. They clinched the number 2 draft pick, the 2nd overall draft pick last week with the loss. So they're going to stay at number 2, and they've got a big decision to make with that number 2 overall pick. Do you take a quarterback? Do you go in a different direction? Do you trade out of that pick? Who knows? Only time will tell. Off-season first starts with free agency, so we'll see how that goes. That will make a huge determining that will be a huge determining factor in what the Giants ultimately decide to do with the number 2 pick overall. As we get to the next game, Lions and the Packers. Packers dominated thoroughly in this game as we expected with no Aaron Rodgers. Brett Hundley stinks. And again, maybe it's not fair to say that he stinks this early into his career, but he stinks. And the Lions dominated that game. Matthew Stafford was outstanding. You know who I was wrong about? I knew he had talent, but I didn't think he would be this good. Is the receiver that they drafted last year. Big kid. His name escapes me right now, but man, he's really talented. And he had an injury this year, and it really impacted the Lions because early on in the season when he was healthy, this offense was dynamic. Then he got injured and missed a big bulk of the middle portion of the season. I felt like the Lions offensively struggled when he went down. But since he's returned to the lineup, they've been a lot better. Somebody help me out. You know what? I'm going to figure his name out right now because I was wrong about him. I thought he was going to be good. I wasn't quite sure. Kenny Golladay is his name. He's been outstanding for the Lions, and I think they've got something in Golladay. They've got a nice trio of receivers with Golladay, Tate, and Marvin Jones Jr. They've got a nice trio right there. They among the best in the league. If they're all healthy, they all bring something different to the table. And Stafford's in a really good spot right now. The one thing they need is a real lead back. It isn't Tion Green. It isn't Amir Abdullah or Theo Riddick, who I think is one of the best situational third down backs in the league. But they don't have a lead dog, and that's what they're missing in Detroit. But Stafford right now is in a good spot. He loves Jim Bob Cooter. I don't know if he's going to be their next head coach or not. But Jim Bob Cooter has done a really good job with Matthew Stafford. I think Stafford is in a really good place. As long as Cooter is back, I can't see how he doesn't continue to grow at the quarterback position for the Lions with the weapons that are around him. Even Eric Ebron, who caught another big pass in this game, is coming along. Man, it's amazing that you could argue this was one of his better seasons in Detroit. And now he's a free agent. Anxious to see what they decide to do with him, if they let him walk, go elsewhere, or if they renew him. But he was just starting to hit his stride in Detroit now. And so we'll see what they do there. But Jim Caldwell was excited. He was laughing with his players, chumming it up on the sidelines at the end of that game. He had no clue that his job would be on the line just 24 hours later, and he'd be shown the door with a pink slip in hand. But we'll see what they decide to do, but that was a nice way to end the season. Tough that they weren't able to get it done down the stretch, but they dominate the Packers 35-11. For the Packers, no Aaron Rodgers means this season was a wash. As we go to the Colts and the Texans, Colts get the win 22-13. There's really not much to say about this game. It's the Colts, it's the Texans. Other than this was the last home game of Chuck Pagano as head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. But that was a foregone conclusion. We all saw this coming. What's surprising is that Bill O'Brien is back, and not only is he back, but he may get a little bit more control, which I didn't see coming. But that saga still has more to go, and we'll see how that ends up going. But Colts win that game, and with the win, they get their fourth win of the season. But it doesn't move them anywhere in the draft order. They remain the third overall pick in the 2018 NFL draft. So winning this game didn't cost them any draft position as they get their fourth win of the season. Bears at Vikings. Vikings needed this game to clinch home field in the first round, and the first round bye, more importantly. And so with the Eagles having their situation at quarterback the way that it is, it was imperative that they got the 2 seed in Minnesota, because most likely the Eagles are going to get bounced. The first game that they play, they're probably going to lose. If that does come to fruition, then all roads to the Super Bowl must go then through Minnesota. So they needed to beat the Bears. And this game was a lot closer than it needed to be. The Bears pulled a little trickeration out of their hat with the dual punt returners. They faked the punt return to Tariq Cohen, all eyes on him for obvious reasons. And Brian Callahan catches it and rumbles down the sideline untouched for a touchdown, which kept the Bears in the game. But they weren't going to beat the Vikings. They win this game 23-10. Really good showing for Latavius Murray, as he's been a really good signing for them. When the season started and Dalvin Cook was looking like a surefire candidate for Rookie of the Year, a lot of people, including myself, were saying, well, damn, that sucks for Latavius Murray, because he's not going to get nearly the touches and carries he thought he was going to get when he signed on with the Vikings. Well, Cook goes down, and he's been the savior at the running back position. And good thing they signed him, because if they didn't have him, the run game would look vastly different. They get the win. They clinch the number 2 seed in the NFC. And by virtue of that, I think all roads to the Super Bowl in the NFC have to go through Minnesota to actually get to Minnesota, which is where the Super Bowl will be held this season. For the Bears, John Fox coaches his last game as head man of the Bears. Again, another one of these firings that we saw coming a mile away. Don't necessarily know if I agree with it, but I understand why it was done. Jets, Patriots. The Jets didn't stand a chance because of the broken hand of Josh McCown. Once he broke his hand, their season was effectively over. And so the good news is both their general manager, Mike McCagnon, and head coach Todd Bowles received 2-year extensions, which they fully both earned and deserved after the job that they did this season with this Jets football team. But they were at a stark disadvantage with no quarterback, hence the 6 points in this game. Patriots needed to win this game to remain the number 1 seed and clinch the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. They got it done 26-6. Wasn't pretty in typical fashion this season with the Patriots, but the ground game, Dion Lewis and company got it done. They win this game, and they clinched the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. Cowboys, Eagles, probably the ugliest game of the day. Eagles pretty much rest their starters. Nicholas Foles got in about a quarter of work, and then it was the Nate Sudfeld show. That show was ugly to boos and tomatoes thrown on the stage. They didn't score any points, did the Eagles, in this game. The Cowboys weren't much better. They were only able to muster 1 touchdown. Dan Bailey hasn't been right since the injury. I'm anxious to see how he looks next year. I just think he wasn't fully healthy, but he missed an extra point, and then he missed a field goal. But nonetheless, Cowboys do win the game to go 9-7 on the season, 6-0 in a very ugly contest. Browns and Steelers. Browns complete their 0-16 season. They end up with the number 1 overall pick, and by virtue of the trade with the Texans last year for the Texans to come up and get Deshaun Watson, they now own the 1st and the 4th overall pick in the 2018 draft. So they're sitting pretty. They're stocked and chock full of talent already as it is, and they're going to have a ton more added to their roster depending on how they decide to move with those first 2 picks in the first 4 picks. So that is amazing. And of course, they couldn't have known that this Texans would have such a bad season and fortune with all the injuries. They probably thought that was going to be a mid to late first-round pick when they made the trade. But to their surprise, surprise, they got the number 1 overall pick and now the number 4 overall pick. It sucks that they had to go 0-16 to get the number 1 overall pick, but they had opportunities in this game. The Steelers rested everyone you could imagine, and they still could not find a way to win this game, which is a damn shame, because they had opportunities to pull this one out. And to me, and I feel like I say this every week when pertaining to the Browns, but a microcosm of their season is they throw a screen to Duke Johnson, who I absolutely love, and he breaks about a tackle or 2. He's got a convoy of blockers, and he runs into the back of one of his linemen, almost fumbles the ball, but holds on, makes a couple of moves, finally gets corralled from behind by a Steeler defender, who then pokes the ball free. After a gain of about 35, he fumbles the football, and it's recovered by the Steelers. If that's not the Cleveland Browns in 2017 in a nutshell, then I don't know what is. Hugh Jackson, is being retained as Browns head coach, which I think is the right decision. I know some Browns fans who think it's the wrong decision, including my man Sean Mack, who absolutely hates the fact that Hugh Jackson is back and would love to see them make a move. I think it's the right move, and I think if they get a quarterback, you will see significant change in wins and losses with this football team immediately because of the amount of talent on this football team. You make the right selections with the 1st and 4th pick, coupled with some shrewd moves in free agency, if there are any to be made, and all of a sudden this Browns team isn't as bad. The Steelers, with the win, they clinched the number 2 seed, but they had already clinched that via Jacksonville losing last week. So really, the only thing that they had to play for in this game was if New England lost, which they knew New England wasn't going to lose to the Jets, so they didn't bother wasting their time playing their guys in this ball game. But they get the win and go into the postseason at 13-3, but the 2nd seed overall in the AFC playoffs. You go to the next game, and I think now we have gotten through all of the 1 o'clock games, so we hit 4 o'clock now, and this is where the real action begun. Panthers and Falcons. Panthers were still playing for a chance at winning the NFC South Division. A win over the Falcons coupled with the Saints' loss to the Bucs would give the Carolina Panthers the NFC South crown, a home playoff game, and a great opportunity to try to get to the Super Bowl. Instead, they lose with a very lackluster performance offensively to the Falcons, who didn't do a lot themselves but did more than enough to win. 1 touchdown and a boatload of field goals for the Falcons in this game was enough to get it done 22-10. With the win, the Falcons secure a playoff berth of their own as they were able to get the 6th and final spot in the NFC playoffs. They would have gotten it anyway by virtue of the Seahawks losing later on in the day. But if you want something done right, you need to just go ahead and do it yourself. And they did it themselves by winning 22-10 and splitting the season series with the Panthers in the process, getting the win, getting the 9-7, and getting into the postseason. So with the win, or excuse me, getting to 10-6 on the season with the win, did the Falcons. And so they get into the postseason at 10-6. For the Panthers, they lose this game, drop to 11-5, lose the division to the Saints, who also lost later on in the day to the Bucs, but it was of no consequence because they needed to win and have the Saints lose. They didn't do their part, so they get the 4th seed. 3 teams from the NFC South make it into the postseason, which at one point I didn't think was going to happen, but as the season drew on, it looked more and more like a realistic possibility, and that's exactly what happened. So both of the wild cards are coming out of the NFC South. Falcons your 6th seed, Panthers your 5 seed. They'll be traveling to New Orleans to play the Saints, who won the division, and by virtue of winning the division are your 4 seed, and they're looking to avoid being beat by the Saints the 3rd time this season. So that'll be a good game there as the Falcons make it into the postseason with the win. Arguably the most drama of the day was in Baltimore, where the Ravens, all they had to do was win and they were in. Simple, cut and dry, to the point. Win, you're in. You lose, and unless some of the other teams around lose, you're out. And so they needed Buffalo to lose, and they needed Buffalo and San Diego to both lose. If they were to lose, they would still get in. But you're asking a lot for other teams to do your dirty work for you. Just win, and you're in. Had Tennessee lost, had Los Angeles Chargers, that is, had the Buffalo Bills lost, they would have still gotten in. But you're asking a lot of other teams to help you when you can just help yourself by winning. They fell down early in this game, and they didn't come out with the spirit of a team that needed to win to get into the postseason. But they were able to rally, tie the game, and eventually take the lead in the game. Actually, after finally cutting the deficit to 3, they were able to take the lead in the game 24-20. and it looked like they were going to win this game, or actually after they were able to take the lead, cut the deficit to 4 at 24-20, they're able to take the lead 27 to 24, and they had this game right where they wanted it. It looked as if they were going to win this game. They had the Bengals on the ropes. They even intercepted a pass late in this game that was called back due to a pass interference penalty on Marlon Humphrey. All in all, they had the Bengals right where they wanted them, 3rd and long, and they allowed Andy Dalton to complete a pass to Tyler Boyd that will go down in infamy for not only the Baltimore Ravens, but for the Buffalo Bill fans around the world who saw their team essentially get in after that completion. And the Ravens, who seemed to be playing some of their best football of the season and looked to be a dangerous team if they could just get in, don't get in because the Cincinnati Bengals finished them off 31-27. 2 improbable wins to finish up the season for Cincinnati over 2 teams with playoff hopes in Detroit and Baltimore. Lands their head coach Marvin Lewis a 2-year extension in a season where it seemed like he was all but done in Cincinnati. So that was a turn of events that really no one saw coming. 1, the Ravens not making the postseason, and 2, Marvin Lewis getting an extension, and all of that really coming to fruition because of the win by Cincinnati in this game. So tough break for the Ravens, but you got to find a way to win this game at home, and they did not, which eliminated them from playoff contention with the win by the Bills, who defeated the Miami Dolphins 22-16. There was a fight in this game. Jarvis Landry and running back Kenyon Drake both are tossed out of this game for fighting. Jarvis Landry was throwing blows. Head coach Adam Gase had some harsh words for Jarvis Landry after this game, to the point where I'm thinking it was a foregone conclusion that Landry would be back. I don't think he's going to be back in Miami after this outburst here. Gase pretty much said, and I'm paraphrasing, but pretty much said this was some of the worst behavior he's seen from Jarvis Landry. And he's seen some pretty bad behavior from Landry. It's not uncommon that he's a guy that is a little extra on the sidelines, but in terms of his behavior on the field, this is the worst he's ever seen. It was despicable, and it's unacceptable, and they won't tolerate it in Miami. So in effect, they said that this is going to go a long way in determining whether he's going to be back in Miami as a free agent or not. And so I think Jarvis Landry already wanted out, but I think he was going to stick it out in Miami. He was going to stay there. I'm thinking that he's going to go now, and I don't think they want him back. So that's an interesting development there in addition to the loss. And we're going to see what happens with that situation. Kenyon Drake took one of the Bills' helmets and flung it all the way to the sidelines. He was ejected. It was crazy. But the Bills hold on for the win, got an interception late off of David Fales, who came into the game in relief of Jay Cutler. Dolphins had a shot late in this game after recovering an onside kick, but David Fales threw the interception to Jordan Poyer to seal the deal. And it was nice to see Kyle Williams score a touchdown, the first of his illustrious career in Buffalo, and then to see the celebration of the Bills in the locker room afterwards, finding out they had clinched a playoff berth due to the win by Cincinnati over the Ravens. To see Kyle Williams, among others, celebrating in the locker room, it brought goosebumps to me, and I know a number of other fans around the league. You didn't have to be a Bills fan to share in the joy of the moment for the Bills as they get into the playoffs with the win at 9-7, 22-16 over the Dolphins. Saints lose to the Buccaneers, and I've got a conspiracy theory that I'm going to throw out. You can buy it, you can not buy it, but here's what I'm selling. Saints wanted to lose this game on purpose. All right, the Rams wanted to lose their game on purpose. Okay, both of those teams had something to play for. The Saints, they had the division to play for, and they knew that if they lost the game and the Panthers won, that they would then be a road team, would not win the division, and the path to the Super Bowl would be that much harder. But once they found out that the Panthers were going to lose to the Falcons, I really, in my truest hearts of hearts, believe that Sean Payton lost on purpose because everybody wanted the Philadelphia Eagles in the second round. Nobody, and I repeat, nobody wanted to go to Minnesota. Everybody is dying to go to Philadelphia. It's the reason why Sean McVay, who knew if he won, which, again, think about it. Resting your players and preparing them for the first playoff game with this Rams organization in just about a decade, or playing a game that, while it has a little bit of meaning, if you win, you get the third seed overall, but it's more important to rest your guys. But again, if you win, you get the third seed, which is important. Or you lose and you could possibly fall to the fourth seed. It's still important, but wasn't important enough for McVay to play anybody of note with this Rams football team. But the Saints had something to play for. And once they found out the Panthers lost, I think they lost that game on purpose. Now, the Saints players still played and tried to win, but there were things that were done at the end of that game, like calling a timeout when Tampa Bay had no more timeouts. The Saints, and they had gotten tackled inbounds, and the Saints calling a timeout seems a little fishy to me. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, neither the Rams nor the Saints wanted any parts of Minnesota. Luckily enough for the Saints, they got their wish. And if the Rams take care of business, and the Saints take care of business, the Saints will be heading to Philadelphia, where that's a very winnable game with Nicholas Foles at quarterback. And the Rams, unfortunately for them, will be heading back to the scene of a crime in which they were slayed 31-7 earlier in the season at Minnesota. So I've got my theories on how the Bucs ended up winning this game, but Jameis Winston was clutch down the stretch in the 31-24 come from behind victory. Alvin Kamara continues to be a stud. He's going to be Rookie of the Year on the offensive side of football. I think the Saints have both of the Rookies of the Year on their team. Defensively, Marshawn Lattimore. Offensively, Kamara, who ran a kickback 106 yards, set a Saints franchise record for the longest kickoff return in Saints history with a 106-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Also had another touchdown catching the football. That guy's a stud out of the backfield. I think he might have even had a run instead of a catch. Either way, he was killing them through the air, killing them on the ground. But when it was all said and done, Jameis Winston made a big play down the stretch. They've got a young receiver that looks really good on their football team out of Penn State in Chris Godwin. He had a big catch, the game-winning catch for a touchdown on that last drive. He looks good. He looks the part. And it'll be an interesting offseason because I think they might actually be better off. But, you know, I don't want to say that. I won't say that they're better off without Deshaun Jackson. But I think they've got something. If Jackson can assimilate himself better in year 2 than he did in year 1, you may have something with Jackson, Evans, Godwin, and then Humphreys. And then at the tight end position, Brate and O.J. Howard. You've got all the skill position weapons you need. All you need now is a stud running back. And you've got it in Tampa Bay. With the win, they finish up the season at 5-11, and at 5-11, this Bucs team will end up with the 7th overall pick in the draft. So they'll be in a position to maybe get their hands on Saquon Barkley. I seriously doubt that. I think he's going to be gone in the top 5 picks, but we shall see what happens with the Bucs. But they are the 7th pick in the draft, and they did find a way to win this game. Special teams stepped up. Even though they missed another kick, did their kicker Patrick Murray. He did make a kick late in this game, and they also forced a fumble, scoop, and score for a touchdown in this game, despite giving up the 106-yard kickoff return to Alvin Kamara. Jags, Titans. Titans needed to win, and they were in, and they did 15-10. It was not pretty. They scored 1 touchdown in this game on a screen to Derrick Henry. The rest of their points off of field goals. Their offense right now is anemic, and they even missed the extra point in this game, but did kick 3 field goals and win this game 15-10. Jacksonville's offense was not very good in this game. Credit the Titans defense for some of that, but their offense has not been great of late. They're going to need to kick it back into high gear as it is now postseason time, but they scored their lone touchdown in this game on a botched handoff by Mariota as he bumped into Derrick Henry in the backfield. Ball goes flying into the air. It hits the ground. It's then scooped up by Yannick Ngakoue and taking the distance for the only touchdown of the game for the Jaguars. So sloppy game by both teams, but the Titans did enough to clinch a playoff berth and get back to the postseason in what seems like an eternity for them. And so they're back in the postseason probably since that 2008 year with Kerry Collins when they were the #1 seed in the AFC. It may not have been that long, but it feels like it's been that long. In any event, they're in. We'll see if they can do some damage on the road against Kansas City in the first round as they clinch the 6th seed in the AFC, excuse me, the 5 seed in the AFC playoffs. Do the Titans. You go to the Chiefs and Broncos. We got our first glimpse, and I told you that this was going to happen, of Patrick Mahomes the second in this game as he started the game. I'm here to tell you, Chiefs fans, this guy's going to be special. Now, you're going to have to deal with some turnovers because guys with strong arms think they can will the football into some spaces, and you get some errant throws with some bad footwork with this guy sometimes. And the one pick he did throw in this game was an overthrow. But the amount of plays he makes off schedule and miraculously trumps the mistakes. And in this game in particular, there's one play where he's getting sacked. And in the process of getting sacked, he throws the football on a line, on a rope, about 20 yards to a receiver for a completion as he's getting tackled. Ridiculous. They took him out of the game briefly and allowed Tyler Bray to play. The Broncos then caught up. Because when they took him out of the game, they were up 24-10, the game seemingly in hand. The Broncos scored 2 touchdowns, one on a turnover, the other just moving it down the field. And all of a sudden, the game is tied, and they put Patrick Mahomes back in the game, and he took him right down the field and got him in the field goal range for the game winner. So this guy's got something to him. And it was a nice debut for him, and doesn't spells trouble for Alex Smith, which we already knew he was going to be most likely on the trading block in the offseason. But with that performance, I think it's pretty safe to say that they're comfortable with Mahomes, and we'll see what happens with the Broncos situation. Vance Joseph keeps his job, but the Broncos were horrible this year at the quarterback position. And with this loss, they clinched the 5th overall pick in the draft. You've got to assume that if they don't get someone like Kirk Cousins or someone of a veteran nature at the quarterback position that's young, that has a foreseeable future as an NFL starter in the league in free agency, you've got to assume that their 5th overall pick will be spent on a quarterback if they like one of the guys that's available at number 5. Raiders, Chargers. Big news today, Gruden gets his deal in Oakland. 10 years, $100 million. That's a college football contract as far as I'm concerned. So he's a Raider for life, it seems like. But the rumor out in Oakland was that Del Rio lost the locker room because of his inability to discipline Marshawn Lynch. He let Lynch get away with whatever the hell he wanted to. And that rubbed a lot of the other guys in the locker room the wrong way. They started to not respect Del Rio because he couldn't control one of the guys in the locker room. And Marshawn Lynch, he was afforded too many liberties and got away with way too much and was never disciplined. The other players saw that, and they took it as a sign of disrespect. And they basically said that Del Rio had to go. And so he got shown the door. In comes Gruden after this loss. But this is more about the Chargers and their resurgence. And a win in this game coupled with a Ravens and Bills loss would mean that the Chargers would get in. And it almost came to fruition. But the Bills did get it done, so they get in. And it's weird because normally if it were just between two teams, the Chargers would have gotten in because they beat the Bills head-to-head. But because it was a 3-team race instead of a 2-team race, by virtue of that, entrance of an extra team, the head-to-head matchup then goes out of the window, and now they start taking into consideration conference record and record versus like opponents and things of that nature, in which the Bills, even though they lost by 30 to the Chargers, had a better conference record by a game at 7-5 than that of the Chargers, which is why the Bills got in over the Chargers. So despite their struggles this year early, they were able to come on late, and unfortunately, it was just a little too late for the Chargers. They win the game 30-10, sweep the Raiders, but just a little too late. Too little, too late for the Chargers as they miss out on the postseason. 49ers, Rams. I talked about the Rams and how I don't think they wanted to win the game, but obviously resting your players trumps winning a game. 3 seed, 4 seed, I don't think it mattered, but everyone wanted the 4 seed. That second game, if you can get past wild card weekend at Philadelphia, was what everybody was shooting for. No one wants to go to Minnesota, 1, but 2, the Eagles, they look like food right now. They look like a great meal to go eat in the second round on the road. And so they look like a huge Philly cheesesteak to some of these teams. And I feel like the path to the Super Bowl is a lot easier if the Eagles are your second round game. And I think the Saints and the Rams felt the same way. But notwithstanding, the 49ers were going to win this game because the Rams had nothing to play for. And Jimmy Garoppolo continues his outstanding football. Now, granted, statistically, this was his worst game of the 5-game winning streak to finish out the season. He threw 2 picks, no touchdown passes in this game. But if you watch the game, he was outstanding in this game, was Jimmy Garoppolo, throwing the football, using his legs to extend plays. He's the real deal, and there's no way he gets out of San Francisco. 34-13 clobbering of the Rams gives the 49ers a 5-game winning streak to end the season. They finish up the season at 6-10. By virtue of that, they're in a tiebreaker now with the Raiders in a coin flip situation for the 9th and 10th pick overall. The winner of the coin flip will get the 9th pick. The loser will get the 10th pick. So the Raiders and the Niners will have to sort that out in the Bay Area as to who will be the 9th and 10th pick overall. The Bears are your 8th pick overall. So the top 10 goes as follows. Browns with your 1st pick overall. Giants with your 2nd pick. Colts with your 3rd pick. Browns again. So 2 in the first 4 picks for the Browns by virtue of the Texans. Remember the trade with Deshaun Watson last year, allowing the Texans to come up and get Watson, allowed the Browns to take their 1st-round pick this year, which turns out to be the number 4 pick overall. Broncos pick 5th. Jets are your 6th overall pick. Buccaneers end up with the 7th pick. Bears end up with the 8th. And a coin flip will determine the 9th and 10th selections in this draft. Either it will be the Niners followed by the Raiders, or the Raiders followed by the Niners. Both teams ended the season at 6-10 as the Niners finish up the season on a 5-game winning streak and end up 6-10 on the season. Meanwhile, the Rams lose the game but still end up with the 3rd seed overall by virtue of their head-to-head win over the Saints earlier in the season. They end up finish up the season at 11-5, just like the Saints do. But the difference between the two, the Saints, however, finished up, or the Rams finished up with the tiebreaker win over the Saints, which lands the Rams with the 3rd overall or 3rd seed in the NFC playoffs. And finally, Cardinals at Seahawks. This game was fun to watch, 1, and 2, it proved to be the final head coaching game for Bruce Arians in Arizona as he retired in an emotional press conference the following day after this game. Bruce Arians was 4-1 in his time in Arizona versus the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. So he had no problems getting the troops prepared to go into one of the most hostile environments in all of football and win in Seattle, and he did it once more in his swan song game. Drew Stanton played well enough to help this team win. Another costly miss by Blair Walsh, which I actually don't feel bad for Seattle, because after the Redskins game, they should have gotten rid of Blair Walsh. First of all, they should have never allowed Stephen House Money Hoshka to walk. I know last season wasn't his best, but in this league, good kickers have off seasons. That doesn't mean you cast them aside. You did in favor of a guy that you watched miss a chip shot field goal and has since never recovered, and you gave him a chance because you thought you could be, you could fix this reclamation project. Instead, he cost you your season because if he makes kicks in this game and against the Washington Redskins, you're in the postseason right now as we speak. Hell, you might have even won your division, but instead, you thought you could save him, and instead, he drug you down with him. And I suspect that they'll get a new kicker in the offseason, but it won't be in time to save their 2017 season as they lose this game 26-24 on a last-second miss by Blair Walsh. The Cardinals finish up the season strong. Arians goes out on a high note. We'll see what happens with the Cardinals, but they get the win on New Year's Eve, 26-24, to send Bruce Arians out on a high note over the Seattle Seahawks and ending the Seahawks' quest for a playoff berth, which they wouldn't have gotten anyway because the Falcons won, but they didn't handle their end of the bargain anyway by losing this football game. So there you have it. That was your Week 17 wrap-up. I felt the need to do that. And so we'll get out of here now. And I want to chop it up with you guys later and talk about everything that's going on, whether it be the playoffs, Week 17, free agency, the draft, anything. Patriots, John Gruden getting this ridiculous deal, whatever the case may be. We'll chop it up at some point, whether it be after one of these games live or in some other capacity, but we'll chop it up soon enough. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here and start planning for some other shows that I have coming up down the line. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll definitely chop it up with you guys later. Felt the need to go live. Really wanted to talk to you guys, but I am starving. I'm about to eat something. So I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. I'm going to catch you guys on the other side. See you a little bit later on. Have a good one.